Hey guys, welcome back. So first off, this is not a sponsored review. I bought all these products with my own cash money, so hopefully that buys me some shred of credibility. Next, I'd like to thank you guys for voting in my recent poll. I asked this question. I'm working on my 26-inch LED light bar video. What should be the most important part? And in 26 hours, we had 34 votes. 9 people said laws and regulations regarding their use. 6 people said verify output claims and current draw. 15 people said how to do the wiring. And 4 people said before and after comparison footage and tools needed for installation. So let me touch on that real quick. I was able to do this with just basic hand tools, but I tell you what, this really came in handy. You might want to get a basic test light. You can get these for $4 at Harbor Freight. So what I'll do is I'll make 3 main chapters for these 3 categories, and I strongly recommend you do not watch this whole video. Just skip to the part that interests you most. Okay, so the first thing I looked up was the laws and regulations, and what I found is for all 50 states there's going to be a different law and regulation regarding auxiliary driving lamps. So what I'll do is I'll show you the laws that I found for my home state, and I'll discuss them a little bit, and that should give you an idea of what you're looking for and how to find them. So I got on Google and I searched California Vehicle Code Auxiliary Light, and I was able to find these 3 vehicle codes that are going to help me decide how to mount this thing, wire it up, and how to use it lawfully. So luckily in my state they differentiate the difference between auxiliary lamps and off-road lamps. So I'll read this first one here. Auxiliary lamps. Any motor vehicle may be equipped with no more than 2 auxiliary driving lamps mounted on the front at a minimum height of 16 inches and a maximum of 42 inches from the ground. Auxiliary driving lamps are designed for supplementing high beam headlamps and may not be lighted with low beam headlamps. And that was adopted in 1959. Now this next one is a clarification on off-road lamps. Any motor vehicle may be equipped with no more than 8 lamps for use as headlamps while being operated or driven off the highway. The lamps shall be mounted at a minimum height of 16 inches from the ground and a maximum of 12 inches above the top of the passenger compartment. Lamps shall be wired independently of all other lighting circuits. Whenever the vehicle is operated or driven on a highway, lamps shall be covered and turned off, and that was adopted in 1986. Now this one regards the use of high beams. It says, during darkness the driver shall use a distribution of light directed high enough to reveal persons and vehicles at a safe distance in advance of the vehicle, subject to the following limitations. A. Whenever the driver approaches an oncoming vehicle within 500 feet, he shall use the lowermost distribution of light so aimed that the glaring rays are not projected into the eyes of the oncoming driver. B. Whenever the driver follows another vehicle within 300 feet, he shall use the lowermost distribution of light specified in this article, and that was adopted in 1965. So what does all that mean? So the first one on auxiliary lamps, this here is a diagram of where your auxiliary lamps should be mounted. Now this purple line, excuse me, this purple line right here is 16 inches from the ground, and I measured that on my Vic, and it goes right through the center of the license plate. And then 42 inches above the ground goes right through the middle of the side view mirrors. So you can mount your auxiliary light anywhere in this area here, and of course I'm going to be mounting mine behind the grill. Now as far as off-road lights, same thing. It's going to be minimum 16 inches from the ground. Now this is the difference. The maximum height is 12 inches above the passenger compartment, and I assume that's because maybe some cars will have a ski rack of some sort. Now that regulation with the auxiliary lamp is, in order for them to be considered auxiliary lamps, they can only come on with the high beam circuit. So in our cars, it uses the multifunction stock right here, and you pull it back for flash to pass, and then you push it forward to lock in the high beams. So it has to be wired in conjunction with this switch, and that's just what I did. Okay, so that should give you an idea of what you're looking for in the laws and regulations. So now let's move on to output claims and current draw. So this light bar right here is the Nilight 26-inch, 540 watt, 50,000 lumen. The color is white, and it was $57. And it's rated as waterproof, and it says it has efficient cooling. So the first thing I did is I got it hooked up, and I measured the current draw with my fluke meter over here, and at with the engine running at 14.4 volts, I was measuring 7.5 amps. And in order to get the wattage, I used an online calculator and just plugged in the amps and the volts, and it came back with 109 watts. So 109 watts sounds a little bit different than the 540 watts that they're advertising on this item listing. So I really don't know how they're getting 540 when it's only 109. If you know, maybe let me know down in the comments. So their claim of 50,000 lumens, realistically I'm going to say it's around 40,000 lumens, and that's based on the current draw and compared to my H13 headlamp lights. These are rated at 8,000 lumen for both, and if 8,000 or 50,000 would be approximately 6 times as bright as the headlights, and after looking at them with the naked eye, I'd say it's more closer to around 5 times as bright. So that's how I'm getting that 40,000 lumen estimation. And as far as the temperature claim of white of 5,500 degree Kelvin, after looking at them with my naked eye, my realistic estimation is around 6,500 Kelvin, and that's because they have a slight bluish tint. Now what does that mean? Now this right here is a color chart, and what I like to think daylight is, or what I consider white to be, is daylight at noon, and that's just right around 5,500 degrees Kelvin. And after looking at these lights, they do have a slight bluish tint, and so I'm going to say they're right around 6,500 degrees Kelvin. So as far as their claim as being white, they're definitely not white. They do have a slight bluish tint. And as far as the waterproof rating, I'm pleased to announce I just went through a rainstorm with this installed, and I checked it after the rainstorm, and I don't have any leaks, and I have no water intrusion, so I'm pleased with that. This thing really is waterproof. And as far as efficient cooling, I did a heat test on this. More on that later. So just for my own benefit, I came up with this formula called value for money. And on my H13 headlight bulbs that I'm using, I paid $39, and those are rated at 8,000 lumen, and I find that to be accurate based on my experience with other LED headlight bulbs. So this 26-inch light bar with a reduced realistic estimation of 40,000 lumen it means for every dollar I'm spending, I'm getting 200 lumen from my headlamp bulbs, and I'm getting 700 lumens from this light bar. So what this light bar offers is it offers a fantastic value for money ratio. I'm getting 3.5 times more light per dollar spent, and I really appreciate that. And I did a 10-minute heat test. I wanted to see how hot this thing was getting, because you really can't help but notice this huge, massive heat sink on the back of this. I wanted to know how well that worked. So I went out and drove my car and got it to normal operating temperature, and I came back into the garage, and my ambient garage temperature was 60 degrees. And I used my little laser temperature gun, and I shot the light bar, and it was 86 degrees at the start of the test. And after 10 minutes of running it constantly, it rose to 105 degrees. And just for reference, I shot the heat sink on my headlamp bulbs, and they were 141 degrees. So that's quite a bit of difference between the headlamp bulbs and the LED bar. So I'm really impressed with these heat sinks, and I really think they're doing a good job dissipating all that extra heat. And I imagine in summertime, when we get to 100 degrees, you can just add 40 degrees to this, and that means it would be running at 145 degrees. So I think that would be acceptable. The next thing I checked is I checked the temperature of my 4-pin relay to see if that thing was overheating. And I shot it, and it was at 92 degrees Fahrenheit, so I'm very pleased with that. It was barely warm to the touch. And the next thing I tested is I ran my fingers all over my wiring to see if anything was overheating, and all my wiring was cool to the touch, and I'm really excited about that, because that means I used the appropriate size gauge wire for all of my wiring. So did I get my money's worth? Well, I do feel like I've been cheated a little bit on the lumen by about 10,000 lumen, and I'm not exactly thrilled with the slight bluish tint. But I can kind of forgive those things based on how much on the overall light output of this. And so I think I did get my money's worth. I'm not too mad at this purchase. All right, now let's move on to the wiring. So what I'll do for the wiring is I'm going to try to make this as quick and simple and easy as possible. And I'll go over some components on the bench here, and then we'll go over to the car and I'll show you how I installed everything. So like I said, this thing is going to be operated with with my dimmer switch on my high beam headlights. So the only time this light bar is going to come on is when I pull the flash to pass, or if I push it forward to lock in the high beams. So that's going to be my my trigger or my switch. That means I'm not installing a separate switch for this installation. And so that means I'm going to be using a basic 4-pin relay, and that's what I'm going to be going over. This is the simplest relay to work with. They do have a 5-pin relay, and that's if you want to get advanced and wire in a switch or maybe even an independent circuit. So for this application only, this wiring that I'm going to show you is only going to work for this car in this application, in this configuration. So you'll notice on the back of these relays, it's going to give you a schematic, and it'll give you references for these different pins. This is pin 30, pin 85, 86, and 87. So this is basically where those pins are going to go. And for this application, you're going to have to make 5 connections. So the first one, pin 30, is going to go to your positive battery terminal with an inline fuse. So that means that wire is going to go directly to the positive battery terminal through a fuse. A fuse is going to look something like that, an inline fuse. Okay, so the next pin is pin 85, and I'm going to call that the negative chassis ground negative, and that's going to be your shortest run possible. Whenever you run your grounds, you kind of want to keep them as short as possible to limit your failure points. And the next pin is going to be pin 86, and that's that goes to the positive high beam circuit, aka your trigger. Now this is what's going to turn the light on and off. So originally what I had planned on how to trigger this is I noticed there's two fuse boxes in our cars. There's one fuse box under the hood and one fuse box in the passenger compartment. So originally I had planned to use one of these devices, and this is called an add-a-fuse tap. And what you do is you pull out the existing fuse for the high beam circuit, and then you plug in this device, and then it now splits it into two separate things. One for the original high beam, and then one you can run to this any accessory you want. So this is what I had planned to do, so I didn't have to cut into the factory headlight wires. But guess what? The fuse that controls the high beam headlamp circuit is in the passenger compartment. So that means I would have to run wire from the passenger compartment out to the front of the car, and that's probably not a good idea. And just to test my theory, I tested that circuit in the fuse box in the passenger compartment, and it still wouldn't work because both sides of the fuse are positive. So both sides of the fuses were on at all times. And I realized the reason why that is because everything's run through the lighting control module. So this, I couldn't get it to work. So what I had to do is I had to go with the tried and true of tapping into the headlight wiring. So this right here is your basic 3-wire connector that's going to be on the back of your headlamp bulb. And this is where this is going to come in. You're going to take your test light and you're going to probe each one of these pins to find out which one is the high beam circuit. And that, once you find out that wire is going to go to pin 86, the positive high beam circuit, aka the trigger. Now pin 87, it goes to the positive wire of the LED light bar. And what I've done here is when you get this light bar, it's going to come naked and with just 2 wires. And what you can see, I've already put on a pigtail here, and I found these pigtails, and these things are so convenient because you can disconnect the light bar and take it out or replace it without having to cut any wires in the future. So I do recommend these. This will make your life a little bit easier. Okay, so the last connection is going to be the negative wire on the light bar, and that's going to go to chassis negative ground, just like pin 85. And of course, that's going to be your shortest run possible. All right, now let's go over to the car and I'll show you what I did. Okay, so I've got my rat's nest of wires hidden underneath this radiator cover, and I've got the relay mounted right here in the header panel in between the headlamp and this grill. And the reason why I did that is because when I was driving in the rain the other day, I came back and I opened the hood and I could see where all the water was, and I could see where it was dry, and this area right here is dry. Okay, so this is where the light bar is going to be mounted, and these 3 pieces of blue tape, those are the holes that I had to drill to mount the light bar. So it's going to mount right in there. Now this area right here, maybe you can see it. Right in there, that's where the relay is mounted, and I'll give you a better shot of that. So that's where the relay is mounted. And let me give you a better shot this way. Those are the wires. Now, in order to run the power wire, the shortest run to the positive battery of the terminal is right through here. But I really didn't want to run any wire through this area because this area is moving and I was afraid about it getting damaged. So what I did is I snaked it around through here, and then I ran it in this little channel here in the fender where some factory wires are, and I've even got them in a wire loom right here. And that's the ground right there. So I found a factory ground and I got it right there. So that's my ground for both the relay and the light bar. And then coming around, I've got the positive wire running back through here. You can see it there. And then it's coming in the back to the terminal right here. And there it is right there. So that is where I put all the wires, and that's pretty much it. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.